Hello and welcome to Geek First Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more here on the Geek First Podcast Network. I'm your host, the man with the bucket helmet, Dylan Musk, and I have with me the icon, Kirklin Patzer. How's it going, my friend?
It's going very good. Sun shining. I'm so excited to talk about some very exciting just news and trailers and just mostly exciting trailers. I feel like the news is a little bit mid compared to the trailers that I saw, but overall, I'm just excited to be on Sidequest. It's always a good time.
You could really put trailers in the news bucket, you know, like they're
I
one
guess
and
so.
the same. So yeah, I hear you though. No, this is an exciting episode. We got something for the Sony gamers. We got something for the Xbox fans. We got something for the Nintendo heads, and then Harry Potter fans, I guess, unrelated to all of that. So we're gonna have some fun breaking all of that down. Just a couple quick shout outs here. The newest episode of the Arcane Retrospective is up now. It's somewhat of a re-release of our Deathloop review, but I called it the Deathloop Definitive Edition in honor of Dishonored Definitive Edition, because what I did, Kirkland, I was listening back to that episode a little bit, before I was putting it up. And we talked for like a good 20 minutes about just like Arcane and our history with Arcane. And then at the end, I did like a ranking and all this stuff, and it didn't really oh my god, something in my throat there. It didn't really feel relevant anymore, so I chopped out some of that stuff. And then I also felt like I'm releasing this as like part of the Arcane Retrospective. Dante's been going on that journey with us. It doesn't feel right that he's not in that episode. So then I went to me and Dante's Game of the Year discussions from 2021, and I ripped out our discussions from Deathloop and I plopped it into that episode. So now it's it's got some DLC on the review. So that's up on the feed, so people can go check that out. And and then this week there's going to be no Arcane Retrospective, just because we're a little bit, the calendar stuff's got moved around a little bit, but we're talking about Redfall today, so that's what you get in place of it. And then the week after you're going to get the Prey Retrospective, and then Redfall's out, and that's right around the corner, as well as Tears of the Kingdom, which we're going to talk about today, and all that stuff. So lots going on. I don't think there's much else. Just once again, please, everyone, if you listen to SideQuest and you like the show, leave a review. It actually helps us a lot. Once again, SideQuest kind of a new-ish feed still. Of course, a lot of people listen to SideQuest through the main Geekverse feed, and that reviews there help as well. But SideQuest as being a separate feed, we want to get the numbers up there, and reviews make a huge difference in terms of getting us up there in that juicy and vicious algorithm. So I would really appreciate it, and I will give you a shout-out if you do such a thing. If you want to leave a bad review too, that's fine. I would love the constructive criticism. So whatever it is, just a review of any capacity is really good. And what else? Join Discord. That's a great time. Hanging over there. Patreon, of course. I don't know what else. We're just crushing it over here. A lot of stuff coming out. Got a bunch of movies. Evil Dead's coming out this week. So
that's right. I'm nervous. I'm nervous for that
one. I still have not seen a trailer, but I just hear everyone's terrified of it. So.
Ugh.
And then, Bo is Afraid. We were going to review that, but this movie just doesn't exist apparently. It exists in 4 theaters, so
crazy.
I don't think we're reviewing that. We want to. We tried, Ari, but you're not making it easy on us. So we'll cover that at some point. And then, just the classic Geekverse content, all that good stuff. So anything from you, Kirkland, before we get into some of the stuff here?
I don't think so. I think you nailed it. We got a Mando finale coming up tomorrow at midnight. I don't stay up for the midnight. So we review them on Wednesday. But that'll be exciting to hopefully be satisfied with that finale. But just lots of reviews. This month is already over halfway through now. It's crazy. Time is just flying this year. And I feel like we're entering the busy stuff. Like you just mentioned all these new games that are coming out, but as well as movies and everything else on top of life itself. So yeah, strap on or strap in.
Put your strap on.
My gosh, my mind's elsewhere.
No, I feel that because this year I've played a few new games, but mostly just a few bigger things and kind of breaks in between all of those. But this week Minecraft Legends is coming out. I'm gonna be checking that out. I'm picking up Advance Wars and Coffee Talk 2. All come out just this week. And then I think in the next couple weeks, Dead Island 2, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Redfall right after that, and then Tears of the Kingdom right after that. It's insane how much stuff is coming out. I have to pick and choose at this point. But this week is going to be fun. I'm excited to jump out into all 3 of those new things. I'm very excited to play some new stuff because I've just been playing some of the older things here. But why don't we keep talking about that? What have you been playing in the last? You've been on Psycho. You were on Psycho 2 weeks ago, so maybe not too much. But yeah, what's going on in your world?
Yeah, I mean, just nothing too much, honestly. I feel like it's just been Prey right now. I'll save those
Yeah.
thoughts for the retro.
Sure.
That's been very exciting and fun to finally jump into. I feel like I never saw like a gameplay video for it either, so like it's very new to me and
Nice.
pleasantly surprised. But yeah, I'll save all those thoughts for the
Cool.
actual retro. Other than that, you dabble in a little bit my Warhammer campaign. I the game that I always mention every single time I'm on here, I swear. But I kind of hit like a wall on my current campaign, so it's just like, okay, I need to take a break from that game, and I'll probably come back in like a month or something, and then it'll all be new and fresh to me. The new DLC came out, which kind of changed the map, which is really exciting, and I feel like I kind of underplayed like the DLC race with the Chaos Dwarves. Like now that I'm like actually seeing like people stream and play gameplay of them, I'm like, man, they actually look really, really cool and very OP. I think like I think Creative Assembly, the studio that makes that, like they have a habit of just over tuning like a brand new DLC lord or like a whole new legendary lord faction, and I think they fell victim to that again. But it kind of makes it fun when you play as them, especially if like you're kind of learning the new mechanics. But still, I think it's a little bit too obnoxious, especially when you're someone like me who doesn't own the DLC, so I just have to play against them, and it's a little bit crazy, but.
That's interesting. Like kind of a design challenge of when you have a game that complex, you want your new character, new race, whatever it is, to be viable and playable and like interesting at launch. So you like, I wonder if there is kind of a idea there of like overtuning the difficulty a bit, just so people can enjoy it and figure it out, because you're going to be at a disadvantage strategically because you're still learning how to play it. But then if some people are so good they're going to figure it out pretty quickly, then it becomes a bit imbalanced, so they have to tone it down, or maybe they just bring other races up to match that power level. But I'm glad to hear that ended up being a bit better than your expectations were.
Yeah.
Does it sound like maybe not quite enough for you to purchase it, but you're more just engaging with it still from afar?
I think I've only purchased one DLC like right at launch, just because I was like really excited to finally play. Without getting too deep into it, they had the Wood Elves, which were introduced from the first game, and by the second game they were just incredibly outdated. So then they were coming out with like a new DLC with a brand new Wood Elf legendary lord, and it was like a pair. It was the sisters. I think it was like the Sisters of Twilight was what they're called. So it was very, very unique because the one faction leader was actually two characters, and they fly on like a flying dragon together. So it's just a really interesting aspect.
Nice.
And with that DLC, they reworked the entire Wood Elf race. So I was just really, really amped at that time. So I bought that one right away, and it wasn't expensive at all. It was like a $10, maybe $15 DLC. Whereas this one, as I talked about it on the last,
like 40, right,
they really increased the DLC price for it. So I'll probably wait for, I don't know, I can see myself around the holidays. They usually have sales around that time, and but who knows? Maybe I'll just really want to jump on there and pay that full price to play some Chaos Dwarves, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, other than that, not too much. I've been playing a little bit of sports games here and there, especially as I was mentioning you off cast. I was playing a hockey tournament, so just to get amped for that, I was playing some NHL, which is just so nostalgic for me playing that game, especially like growing up playing hockey. Like that was just a main rotation game where like after hockey or whatever, like all the kids would like go to a house and you'd play that and just chirp each other and have fun. But yeah, I was dabbling a little bit of that, but other than that, not too much on the gaming front for right now, other than Arcane, good old Arcane. It's funny that we're kind of entering the end times for that retro, because I have so many things like backlogged on my games list that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to jump back into Midnight Suns or play these other games. But it's like, no, I told myself I'm not touching that until I'm done the Arcane games, because especially something like Prey, I feel like it's not as meaty as something like Arcs or anything like that, but it definitely like I don't want to rush through it, especially since we do have a little bit of time before the next review, but not too much time. I can't just
there's a ton of side quests in that game compared to a Dishonored, right? So you could get pretty in the weeds of it, even if you just like fly around outside. You could just spend hours and hours and hours of doing that and never actually progress. So I know, and then I have this feeling too this whole time going through the Arcane retro, where there's just we talk about how much play styles and different things you can do in the games, and I'm more like, I'm playing through Prey. This is like my third or second time through it, and I'm already just like, man, I wanted to like do another playthrough and try some of these things too. So it's dangerous when you play an Arcane game and you love it, because that's just all you want to do, even when new things are coming out. So thankfully we'll have Redfall, and that's like, I can justify putting however many hours into that this year, just playing through it over and over again, trying the different characters and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been working my way through Prey. I think I started that like in January, like even before
yeah.
Arcs maybe, and I just have slowly been chipping away in between each other Arcane game. I like go back and like explore a couple new areas, and then because I wanted to have a lot of time with it and explore and stuff like that. And so that's going well. And then I want to show two kind of newer things here. Well, one newish thing, one old, very old thing. But I've been checking out some of the Donkey Kong Country games because those are like 2D platformers that I've never really engaged with. Like honestly, when I look at my history of like Donkey Kong, it's like, yeah, I've just played a shit ton of Donkey Kong 64 and like nothing else. Like I feel like I have a major blind spot, and that's even a game that a lot of people dislike too. But going back to Donkey Kong Country, which all three of them are on. Oh, I know there's other ones too, but those original like SNES ones are on Nintendo Switch Online, and they're fun. They have like just a weird aesthetic to them, like the art style. They did something weird with like capture, and it has like a 3D-ness to it. It's kind of bizarre unless you watch it, but the music is obviously iconic. I've listened to that for years. But I wanted to bring this up because I thought this was kind of a funny observation, which is like, in Mario, you don't have like HP, right? You just like, if you have a power up, you essentially have 3 HP. If you're big Mario, you kind of have 2 HP. And then if you're regular small Mario, you have like 1 HP. And that's kind of how they do it. And Donkey Kong Country has kind of like a weird symmetrical but like slightly different thing, which is that in the first game you play as Donkey Kong, and then if you like collect a barrel and you get an extra life, you have like Diddy Kong with you, and he's like walking behind you, and you can like pick him up and throw him and stuff like that. But then if like you throw him into a place where he would take damage, then he gets knocked out and you have to go get another barrel. Or if you as Donkey Kong get hit, then you start playing as Diddy Kong, and then eventually if you come across a barrel, you can like recruit Donkey Kong, and then he goes behind you, and that's kind of how the HP system works. You can only really take 2 hits until you like replenish and stuff like that, which is interesting. But then I love what they did for the sequels, because then it's Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest, not Conquest, but like Diddy's Kong, pun.
Funny.
And then in that game, Diddy Kong is the main character, and then Dixie Kong is like the trailing character that you would get when you hit a barrel. And then the third game is Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, I think is what it's called. And in that game, you play as Dixie Kong as the main Kong. And then it's like, I don't even know who it is. I think it's like Donkey Kong Jr. or like some weirdo I've never ever seen before or after. If it is Donkey Kong Jr., I guess he has like just a different look to him. And so then he's the trailing character. So same mechanics. You can pick him up, throw him around, and if you play as him and whatnot. So it's been interesting going through those. They're just, solid 2D platformers and whatnot. But they are very weird, which I feel like is important to Donkey Kong's history, is that it's kind of a weird character, and you get like Wrinkly Kong in there and all these weirdos. And it's just a bizarre world. And we've been talking about it a lot recently, just, with the Mario movie, or me and Travis had a longer discussion on Donkey Kong because there's been some rumors and stuff like that about a new game. And it's like, it's been a while since we've had a new one. And I don't know. I just really want a new Donkey Kong game. I'm curious what they'll do with it, and I can't wait to get some of those weirdos back in my life, because those Kong games, they're really interesting. Like whether it's just 2D platformers or otherwise, I do love Donkey Kong as a character, and I hope he comes back pretty soon.
I think that's a really like good move from Nintendo too, if they go in that direction. Just because like Super Mario movie, like on the radio today, I heard that it was still like #1 at the box office. Yeah. Like they showcase quite a few Kongs too, like in that movie. Tons, I feel like right now is just strike while the iron's hot, if I can't butcher that term. But yeah, I feel like Donkey Kong is another character that I'm pretty sure, just you describing those games, I've played one of them. I just remember like DK, some weird like, I don't even want to call it like 3D animation. It's like hard to describe, but like the capturing for like the characters, I'm just all over the board today. The capturing for the characters just looked very strange for like their movements and everything. So I have played one of those games, but like I still just don't really know anything about that universe or what it is, and maybe that's intentional, kind of like what you're saying, which is how crazy or wacky, better term, for like what those characters are. But I think it would be so fantastic if they came out with like a Mario Odyssey, not like to the full.
Well, that was the
what
rumor,
that game is
that like there was a new, like that team was making a Donkey Kong game, so you would assume that it would be like 3D platformer, not quite open world, but like a larger Donkey Kong 64, like essentially a sequel to that, because there hasn't really ever been another one. So
yeah,
if those rumors hold true, then it makes me wonder what the hell's going on with Mario. Why aren't they making a new Mario game? But anyway,
Yeah.
I would love if they pivoted or just make it like a collection of the two where you can play as Mario and Donkey Kong in one game. Sure, why not? That'd be cool. In a
That would be
3D, like
fantastic.
open world platformy sort of game.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. I'd love to see something like that.
I don't think they would go this route, but I would love to see like a DK centered game where like Mario is actually the villain, and it's like a really interesting story where I don't know, Mario's taking bananas, like whatever, whatever, like insert.
Would it be actual Mario or would it be like Shadow Mario or something like that?
I would actually prefer it if it was like a mishap thing where he thinks it's actually Mario, but then it's revealed maybe halfway through the game that Mario's captured somewhere, and then it's kind of like minor spoilers for the movie, but they like end up kind of being friends or something by the end of it.
Yeah. That'd be.
I'd love that.
To see. And then the other thing I've been playing, of course, is Hitman Freelancer, which I talked to you all about a couple months ago. And I've still been playing that, working through that Freelancer mode. And I finally, over the weekend, got my first win. I beat the campaign, so don't have to hold the applause. Like, come on, give it to me. Because it took me a lot of attempts, a lot of retries, and all that stuff. And like it's pretty long. Like obviously, it's not something you're gonna do in one sitting. Well, you probably could if you're a streamer doing crazy stuff like that. But for me, it's usually like, okay, I'll do 3 or 4 levels and then kind of come back to it. And like a whole campaign is, I guess, a successful run of like 20 levels or something like that, more or less. But it was really, really great, really, really fun. And it was like the end of it was super intense where I had 3 levels to do left. And one of them I had to go to Colorado, and that's like a very intense level. It's like there isn't any neutral zones where there's like citizens and stuff. It's like all just guards and whatnot. And I very quickly in the level, like in the first 30 seconds, got into a gunfight. And and since it's only guards, there was just an endless onslaught of guards. And so I died, but you can die like a couple times in a campaign, like specific spots. So thankfully I wasn't at a point where dying was going to be an end state for that run. So that was like, fuck, I'm on the ropes now. And I kind of forgot too. I thought when I died that I was like, shit, my campaign just ended. So I was a bit of breath of fresh air of like, oh, okay, I actually do have another chance here. So that felt good. And then I went to this hotel level, and that also ended up getting into just a frantic situation where I'm like, hey, this is kind of a risky move, but I'm going to go for it here. Ended up pissing off the guards, and then it turned out to be a shootout. But that was much better because I was in I could hide in this bathroom in a hotel room, and so I could just stand in a corner, and then would walk through the door. I just pop a headshot in him. I was good. So I ended up surviving a huge onslaught there and made it through. But then in the finale level, I guess I remember I was telling you about this where there's when you get to the, I guess, final levels of these sections, you have to identify who the target is. So you get different tells of here's what they look like, and here's some of their habits and stuff like that. You have to go around and find them. And since this was the final one, there was 10 different people that I had to narrow it down from. Usually it's 4 or 5. So it's so many people. I had to walk around this neighborhood in Whittleton Creek and figure out their tells, or a couple of them was oh, their hair color is different. I can knock them off the list. And I got down to 2 or 3 left. And then there's this fun mechanic you can do where sometimes your target will have a meeting with another potential target, and they'll be having this conversation. And if you take out one of those 2 targets, then you can take their phone and use it to set up a meeting, and then you can bring in that target. And so what I did is in this neighborhood, there's one house that's pretty empty. Because it's being renovated. So I'm like, okay, that's a great building. I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna set up this meeting in the basement, and there's no way there's gonna be anyone else around to make end this in a bad way. And then I remember too, in that same basement, there's I don't even know what you would call it. It's essentially this huge security vault where there's this huge, metallic door you can open up, and then it's got the classic red laser beams across the room. And if you can get to the end, you can get some bonus thing. And so what I did is I turned off the security system. I went to the end of that hall, put the phone down to set the meeting point at the end of this hallway with all these red lasers. And then I went out and I activated the lasers, and I was like, are the targets going to be dumb enough to walk into this room with these lasers and activate them? I'm so this is a risky move for the final mission, but I just have to see what's going to happen. So I did it. And then I went and hid in a freezer, and I was just waiting for the target. But then one of the things I forgot was oh shit, everyone who's still a potential target is also going to come to this meeting. So I'm looking with my Hitman vision, and there's like 4 or 5 people that are all coming to this house, and I'm like, fuck. And the first one to enter was not who I picked as like my main suspect. So I'm like, damn, they're going to be the first one to go down here. So they go down the stairs. They have their like bodyguard with them. And she is an idiot and just walks directly into the lasers. Fucking house explodes, like the basement, like that area just explodes. She dies, but she was not the actual target that I need to take out. And now the actual target has been alerted by this, and he's dashing for the exit. He's getting out of there. So I'm like, oh shit. And so I ditch my freezer. I run upstairs. I run out to the backyard. He has like 3 or 4 of his lackeys with him. And I'm like, there's no chance here. Like, I just have to go guns a-blazing. I don't have like an automatic weapon. I just have my rinky-dink little silenced pistol. So I just start firing into the crowd of him and like his bodyguards. I eventually have to reload because I didn't get the kill shot. So I'm, reload, firing more shots. I eventually take the target out and a couple of his guards. I'm getting shot. My screen is like black and white, the red circles around. I'm like, one more bullet, one more, just anyone blowing on me, and I would be absolutely done for. But eventually I made it into a basement, and I just like hid in this corner for like, I feel like 10-15 minutes before things finally cooled down. I think a couple more guards came in, and I took them out silently, and I just waited it out. And eventually they moved on, and I could escape the level and get out there and get my win. So it was very, very intense. But, man, I cannot, once again, say enough about how good Hitman is and how good Hitman Freelancer mode is specifically at just making these levels infinitely playable. And this scenario that I just described, it would never happen with the base game and the way you interact with that level and where the targets are. It would just never happen. But because of these, just all of these circumstances put together, just made for this really unique situation. So I immediately after I did it, I got that win, I'm immediately going to go back for more. Like, it's not something you just beat and move on. Like, I'm going to be playing this throughout the entire year. And even though it's like not quite a new game, but it also is a new game at the same time, I'm going to be putting this on my top 10 list somewhere because it's just so special. So love Hitman so much.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm curious to see like what my version is, because you said they like combined all 3 games, and a while ago I had like Hitman 2, I think it was, for PlayStation Plus. So I have something on there. I haven't gone on there and checked, but I mean, everything you're describing just sounds so fun, and especially just like you said, like that would never happen on the base game because you would probably just reload a save or something, or if you know the level very well, like you already know what your target is. But the
like
freelancer
on that
aspect,
level, there is a specific like story mission you can do to like trick one of the targets to go into that basement with the laser vault. Like, obviously that laser vault's put there for a reason. Yeah. But just, the way you would interact with it here, where some other random person would be in this house, like, it would never really happen. So, yeah, it was just this specific circumstances that made for this crazy moment.
But the phone call worked, your theory, right? It actually attracted people there. Although it was multiple people.
I'm not exactly sure how it works. Once again, like, there was 10 initial suspects that it could be, and I don't know if it calls all 10 of them or if it only calls, like, because you can eliminate people from your list, and it's like, I could not tell if it invited everyone or just the people that I still had on my list, because I had narrowed it down to like 3 of them, and I wasn't exactly sure who it would be. And I was hoping that phone call would be like, it would just call the actual target, because I took out the other person who was part of that meeting. But so I don't understand all the mechanics yet, which is why I need to keep playing it, because I need to figure out more and more about this thing. But yeah, with that, why don't we take our first quick break here, and we'll be right back to get into some of these news, some of these trailers, all that good stuff. Okay, we are back. We're going to start with this, which just kind of dropped today, which is that not Hogwarts Legacy, but a new Harry Potter Quidditch game has been announced, a multiplayer game. I guess the full title is Harry Potter Quidditch Champions. And we don't have tons of information on this yet, as once again, this information just came out today. I don't think there's a trailer or anything with it. But yeah, this was just announced today. And obviously, if you played Hogwarts Legacy, if you didn't, if you listen to our review, obviously Quidditch was missing from the game. You can go to the Quidditch pitch and walk around, and there's flying on your broomstick and whatnot. But the actual game of Quidditch is like, I forget, like some professor's like, oh yeah, we had to shut it down this year.
Yeah, like, there's an injury.
Yeah, exactly. There's some throwaway line of why it's not happening. But I mean, that game's doing so many other mechanics that in the review, I don't think any of us really blamed that for not being there, though it would be cool. But I guess first of all, like, just putting the tinfoil hat on for a second, do you think this is part of the reason is that, WB, the publisher and all this stuff, knew that, okay, we have this other Quidditch game in development, so Hogwarts Legacy, don't worry about it, because we're actually going to like fill that niche with another thing? Or is that just like it just kind of worked out luckily that Hogwarts Legacy didn't have it. The developers didn't really fit it into their plans for the game, and then luckily some other developer was in house and they were gonna make a separate thing.
I feel like on the surface, I just think it's like a coincidence and it kind of worked out that way. But I don't know, stewing on it a little bit, it's like maybe that actually was a decision, because I just feel like Quidditch is such an integral portion, like part of the Harry Potter universe of Hogwarts. And I like while they were making Hogwarts Legacy, like they must have had that discussion of like, hey, what do we do with Quidditch? Are we leaving this out or are we putting it in? Because there obviously is going to be like broom flying and all that jazz. But just especially for like how kind of funny that throwaway line is, it's just like, oh, okay, well, I think even on the review I talked about like, oh, maybe they're going to do a Quidditch DLC or something like that. Like it just seemed like something that they were setting up to be like its own thing, like its own Quidditch type thing. So that's exactly what this is kind of being. So now, you know, I love a good conspiracy theory. So maybe that is the case. Maybe they did know about this, but at the same time, I know Hogwarts Legacy hasn't been out for too long, but I kind of would have expected if that was the case, like it would have been talked about like pretty early on, because like this, we don't have like a full gameplay trailer or anything like this. Like it does seem pretty early on. So
yeah,
it's probably just a coincidence, and just as things played out, obviously that game had so many purchases that maybe it was like a testing for like, is the interest there? Like, can this actually be marketable? And it sold crazy, so maybe it's okay. I green light the Quidditch thing. People are into the Harry Potter stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking into the studio, which is Unbroken Studios, the developer of this, because I had not heard of them before. And you know, just looking at their history, like they're actually currently also a development studio on Suicide Squad, which is like, ooh, I don't know if you want that on your resume right now. But I was thinking like, I wonder if that would have been a thing where it's like they worked on Hogwarts Legacy maybe as a support studio and literally just built the Quidditch system out, and then that was like part of that game, and like that way, oh my god, what is the studio that made Hogwarts Legacy? I can't think off the top of my head, but like that studio can make the game. They can have even their broomstick mechanics, but then like this Quidditch thing can be a pretty self-confined system in the game. I don't know, maybe that's too many moving parts at that point. But that could have been a potential thing. But I don't think it's a big deal to have this separated out into a separate SKU and, you know, a way for them to make more money and stuff like that. This is a multiplayer game. I don't know if we know if this is like a free-to-play thing yet. I don't think we have any sort of those details. Does it excite you? Do you care about this? Do you think this is something you'll be wanting to play? Of course, I think there was a great, I don't know if it was great. There was a Harry Potter, like a World Cup Quidditch game on like the GameCube, PS2 era. So I think it does exist to some extent, but obviously getting a new, fresher one with like actual multiplayer on a multiplayer console is obviously a very different ball game than what that game was back in early 2000s.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Travis said it in the Discord on the video game channel there of like, I could definitely see this being like a streaming type game, like if we're doing our 24-hour charity stream or anything like that. So, but like, I agree definitely, but it also depends on just how gameplay wise, like, is it actually really fun to play amongst just two people, or is it, I don't know, online only? Like really what path they go down. The pardon me, the screenshot on like that article that you sent me, it seemed like it was very what was that game called, like Knockout City, like the dodgeball one? Knockout it seemed like that aesthetic a lot. So it's like
Fortnite energy to it. It knows what it's doing for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And like in my mind I'm like, like if they do a pretty, I mean, Quidditch isn't a real game, but they make the Quidditch more like arcade styles as opposed to trying to keep it like as true to the movies or the books or anything like that. I think that could be really fun actually, because Quidditch is, you know, we went through our Harry Potter retros and we realized just how sus that game actually is. You're the biggest critic on it, and I feel like I kind of
the rules are totally fucked. They don't make any sense at all. Like
they don't make any sense
to change them for this game to make it actually like a thing that just has points that go up and it ends at a reasonable time rather than
absolutely. And that's
imagine
why
being in a multiplayer game for like 3 weeks because it's just like never
just waiting for the seeker to catch that damn golden snitch. I definitely think that they're gonna go a more arcadey feel, and I mean I really like playing sports games, but also just an arcadey style on the sports games. I love my FIFA Streets, I love my Strikers, I love just those little spin on the sports games, because it just makes it a lot more approachable too for people that maybe aren't super knowledgeable on soccer, but like anybody can really play Mario Strikers, right? So I hope they do something like that to just make it very approachable, and hopefully, I don't know, hopefully just something that really just blows up and people just can't stop playing it. And if it's free to play, that's the most approachable route to go if nobody has to actually pay things to play it.
For
it
sure.
also seems like a Game Pass, like just stapled all over that. I could see, get your custom brooms, get your custom or Games Pass. That's not what I meant to say. A Battle Pass. That's the term.
I was gonna say. I was like Game Pass.
Sorry.
I was trying to think about like WB and how much of their stuff has gone to Game Pass, and I couldn't think of any. But off the top of my head, I can say this that for multiverses, I remember there was like a Game Pass thing where if you have Game Pass, you could just get like a couple costumes, like
That's
bonus costumes or something. So I could see there being something like that in terms of a connection between the two.
Yeah, I misspoke though. Battle Pass. That's what I was going with. Which
definitely.
I mean, multiverses also have that. It seems like all of these free to play games have the Battle Passes, which makes sense. It's a way for them if people want to do microtransactions, they can get some money that way.
So this is called Harry Potter Quidditch Champions, not Hogwarts, no Wizarding World, Hogwarts, not any of that stuff. I don't think we know this yet, but do you think there's going to be like, is Harry Potter a playable character? I feel like he's got to be if he's put in the title. Are we going to get like all the people? Is there going to be Hermione and like, I don't know. Like, obviously Hermione didn't play Quidditch, but like, are they just going to throw all these classic Harry Potter characters in there? Or are they going to create new characters? You're going to create an avatar with a multiplayer setting. Like, what are you going to do? Have multiple Harrys on the field? That could be kind of strange. How do you think? How do you think that's going to look?
It is strange that they labeled it that way. I feel like it kind of makes me think less of the connection between Hogwarts Legacy and this, because it doesn't have that Wizarding World title, which I completely forgot about until you just mentioned it right now. I feel like I could see it being maybe like Harry Potter is like an older gent now, and it's just like his legacy is just, I don't know, he's like it's like the Harry Potter Quidditch tournament or something. He's like the legendary chosen one, and Quidditch champ, and like he's just the person that kind of reads you through the tutorial or whatnot, and maybe it's that way, because I do think it'll be like, it's not just going to be the cast of Harry Potter. I feel like that would kind of be strange and limiting, especially if they
I don't know, man.
something
Put that
like
in the Battle Pass, though. You paid $20 if you want to unlock Harry. Like,
yeah,
I'm thinking cynically, of course, but like, damn, dude, that would rake in the cash if
you're
like
right.
to get access to these characters. That's what you put as like the end goal of a Battle Pass.
Yeah,
That'd be a good way for them to do it if they want to make money.
I'm gonna stay on that hill though. I think Harry Potter will not be playable. I think he'll be there, but I don't think he'll be playable. That's my stamp of guessing, at least. See how the prediction goes.
Yeah, I think for myself, I don't really care about this. I don't like Quidditch. If it's a cool multiplayer fun game, maybe I'd check it out. I think if it's not free to play, you'd probably have a pretty hard time convincing me to pick it up. But I'm curious to see what this thing is, and yeah, I feel like this is a better time for a game like this to release than in the PS2 era, the GameCube, where like things like this couldn't have like online multiplayer to the same extent. Right. I guess that, I do have some cynical nature to it in terms of just like how they're going to monetize it, because I just feel like it's going to be gross. That's just I don't know. That's just my bias coming in about WB and games like this and what we're going to see from it. So we'll see about that. And then also, I once again hadn't heard of Unbroken Studios. Not to say that they aren't talented, but even looking at the previous titles, okay, Suicide Squad, working as a sports studio there. I don't know. I don't care about that. Their most relevant game is that they made a battle royale. So they've been in the multiplayer space. That's a good sign, at least in terms of running servers and whatnot. In 2018, called Fractured Lands, which I looked up on Steam and has mixed ratings, which I generally have pretty good faith in, like what Steam has for that tag on things. It's usually a pretty good barometer of what's going on. But it's like in early access still. So I don't know what's going on there in terms of like, is this finished, or do they just kind of get their money and like peace out sort of thing? Or maybe they're still working on it, but on their website they throw 2018 on there, so that feels like, okay, early access for 5 years. What's going on here? And then they had another game I've never heard of called Fantastic Plastic Squad, which, not a great title, but essentially it's like where you play as like little action figures in bedrooms, backyard, and stuff like that. It's like a multiplayer, like third-person shooter sort of game. So that looks cool. Like I like that setting, so that seems fun. But once again, I've never heard of it, so don't know if I should put much faith into it. So I also look at the studio and I'm not like, okay, well, this is going to be a home run. I think we'll just have to wait and see. So
Yeah.
we'll report back on it. But I think it's cool that it's like, okay, Hogwarts Legacy didn't have that, and here's this other game that's going to fill that niche. And hopefully they can coexist. And who knows, maybe even Hogwarts Legacy 2, which there's no way that game's not getting a sequel at this point. Is Quidditch a big... Is that already something that they really wanted to do in a sequel, or maybe even like a DLC, but probably more of a sequel? Or is this like announcement make them not really interested in doing that now? Because, well, if you want to play Quidditch, go play that game, and we're going to, once again, have another reason why it's been banned for this other school year that you're attending this university or the school for. So we'll see what's going on there.
Absolutely. I looked it up, and Hogwarts Legacy was Avalanche Software.
Avalanche, right.
That was developed.
One of the two Avalanches, yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Moving on, where do you want to go? Do you want to go Sony? Do you want to go Nintendo? Do you want to go Xbox? What's our vibe right now?
I'm thinking Nintendo, actually.
Okay.
I just got some things to say.
Yeah, so this has been coming up a lot on the podcast because recently there was a trailer for Tears of the Kingdom, and then there was the Nintendo Direct that me and Travis broke down. But then there's been a new, and what they're saying is the final trailer here for Tears of the Kingdom. Of course, it's coming out May 12th. And this is like a good 3.5 minutes of gameplay, I think, showing a bit more of that fuse sort of mechanic that they showed off in that direct. Did you catch that direct, by the way? Did you see what?
I didn't catch the direct. Okay. I just watched the trailer for this. So,
all right. What did you think of the trailer?
I was incredibly impressed by this trailer. This was the first time I think I'd seen a trailer for this game and really was like, wow, like this is actually very, very impressive. I think the initial ones, maybe I was just, I don't know, maybe not the super good mood while I was watching one up, but I'm like, oh, this is just Breath of the Wild in the air, as maybe some people have made some comments similar to that. But I was just blown away by like the beauty of the world, which, yeah, it is pretty similar to like Breath of the Wild, but especially like the darker locations, the different like, I'm assuming they're NPCs, but like just like people that you would interact with, or just like the cast of characters. Like Zelda always has like different species of individuals, but I was just so taken into that Legend of Zelda world from watching this. And yeah, just the combat, the puzzles, the different just locations. Ganondorf, man, as soon as he like just started dropping lines, I was like goosebumps. I love that villain so much, and just the way that just like the line he dropped. I can't even remember right now. I don't even want to butcher and paraphrase it, but it's just like, the king is coming back. And it was just like, oh my God, like I feel it. Like I feel the bad guy is coming. So I was incredibly blown away by this trailer.
And I think from someone your guy too, right? That's Matt Mercer, who's like from the show that you love.
Yeah. He does Critical Role, so he's the DM for that YouTube channel. But yeah, he is one of the main people that put on Vox Machina, which everybody go watch that show. Every time it gets brought up, I'm going to say that because I freaking love that show.
But now
so
he's
much.
The voice of Ganon, so there you go. Now he's doing
it's amazing. Fantastic voice actor. He's done so many different games and whatnot. But yeah, he's also just the gold standard for DMing in D&D. But yeah, no, the look of everything visual-wise looked amazing. And it's crazy because like I haven't even really played Breath of the Wild. Like I've only played like that starting island thing. And it was like, okay, I kind of got a feel for the game, but I don't own it, so it was just like trying it at a friend's house or something. Looked beautiful, looked really cool, but just nothing that made me like, wow, I need to go buy this right now. I also just felt like randomly like it just I really like Legend of Zelda games, but I don't love it so much that I have to like have every single Legend of Zelda game. I feel like I kind of have my Legend of Zelda, which is like Wind Waker in my mind. I just have so much nostalgia for that game. Played through it like during COVID when I had COVID. I was sick for like a week, so I'm like I'm playing through Wind Waker right now, and still just a 10 out of 10 game in my eyes. I love that one so much. So I feel like playing this newer one, it's like this is really cool, but this is not my Legend of Zelda. But seeing like the newest trailer, it's like, man, like I want to get taken into this world, because as far as I know, this is the first one that kind of has like two games actually combining, right, in a Legend of Zelda like world. Like maybe some people can make arguments that they're all connected, they're all like different timelines or whatnot.
I think this is like the most outwardly sequel of the series, I would say. But I mean, there definitely is a lot of sequels in there. But I feel like this one actually, you can. It's obvious. Whereas some others, other times it's just like Nintendo says they're connected, so it's like, okay, well, I guess they are, but they don't really feel like actual sequels to each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was very, very impressed from this trailer. Still, I probably won't pick this one up. Luckily my buddy Tyler, hopefully he's listening here. He maybe he'll let me borrow Breath of the Wild when he has his hands full on Tears of the Kingdom, because I definitely want to jump in there.
Pressure on him live on air.
You heard it here, Tyler.
So now, Geekverse, if you don't hear any perspective of the game from Kirklin, it's because Tyler did not.
Yeah, exactly. Damn you, Tyler, bringing down the content. But no, I was very, very impressed by this, and from someone that like my barometer was like next to nothing, and now it's like, holy crap, this game actually, like, this looks very, very good.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty much the same as you here, where, you know, I've been excited for this game enough just because I love Breath of the Wild, and it's a sequel to that. Cool, all that good stuff. But like the trailers for a long time weren't doing it for me. They weren't showing much. And then even that Nintendo Direct, there was some really cool mechanics in there. Me and Travis talked about it, but I still came out with like, I have more questions. And this is like, the Direct was very minimal in terms of, it showed like 2 or 3 mechanics in detail, and that was kind of it. It wasn't like, here's a full overview of everything in the game, I guess. And so I came out of that even feeling like kind of lukewarm, but this trailer is fucking outstanding. This is one of the best game trailers I've seen in a very long time. Like, I had goosebumps by the end of this thing. The music is unreal. Like, obviously there's a lot of remixes or playing on like themes that are a big part of my life, back to Ocarina of Time and things like this. So obviously that part sticks with me, but then like just some of the new orchestral stuff was hitting so damn hard. There's just an epicness to this trailer that made it just incredibly outstanding. And visually it's very solid and all that stuff. So getting into kind of some of the specifics here, I think one thing that this trailer really did for me was it just showed a lot more of different shots of the sky world, and we've got a bunch of that already, and in the Direct they go to a couple of them and all that stuff. But I felt like when just with some of the camera angles they showed here, I was pretty blown away by like how much is going on in the sky world. There is so much going on there, and I think it's now announced too that like you actually start the game in the sky world, and that's where you probably do the tutorial and whatnot, and then I'm sure you jump down back into the main world. So that's cool that you get to start up here as well. But man, there just looks to be so much going on there, and there's like a weird spherical place that you're going to, a little moon or something. It's not a moon, but it's like some weird tech sphere. There's like this weird thing that looked like, kind of like a coliseum, just like hovering in the sky. So I think to me that was very impressive. And I'm like, I was already excited to explore these sky worlds, but it actually looks like there is a ton of it in terms of just raw landmass. And then kind of beyond that too is I have a lot of questions, and I still do, of okay, how much is the base world changing, right? This is a sequel to an open world game, and very rarely, if ever, do open world sequels use the same open world map. But there were certain touches in here, and obviously a big part of it's like the navigation with these cars and vehicles that you're using. That's going to change how you navigate it. But then there was like an element to where they showed an shot that almost looked like some kind of alien crop circles, right? There was like markings down on the ground that you could really only decipher if you're up in the sky world and so high above that you can see these things from above. And I think that was, to me, a very exciting element of just being able to engage with the world and look at it from above truly, and like see some of these details and figure out what's going on and what's changed and that sort of stuff. So I think I'm kind of more sold on that element of the game of them reusing that overworld. But then also, once again, it's because there's so much Sky Island stuff too. And then we saw a lot of undergroundness going on here, which you mentioned as well. And that's like, that's I don't know how vast that is, but even the 2 areas we did see were pretty huge just in and of those places. Yeah. So I think, man, like, okay, you're changing up that main world, but then you're adding so much under and over top of that world too, that it's like that's going to be pretty amazing. I can't wait to see all those details and get into it now.
No, it's a great just decision on their behalf, because that's something that even I had. Like, I haven't really navigated that first game's world, but it's just like, if they're going to do the second game on top of that, like, how can they really change it? Like, you're going to go to a same area and expect a similar, I don't know, landscape or something. So the fact that I guess we always knew about the sky portion because that was from like the first initial trailer, but knowing like the underdeep, the underdark, whatever you want to call it.
I love
it opens up a new gate to travel in and explore. And man, it looked terrifying. And again, I was shouting out my Wind Waker. It was very much reminding me of that
Yeah.
the first Dragon Roost Island boss battle in the volcano, and I was getting hyped. It looked so fantastic. The boss just looked really creepy and demonic. So yeah, I loved all that.
That's a good point too, because obviously in Breath of the Wild, like the whole thing is surrounded by ocean, and you can swim to an extent. And there's like specifically one huge island, but there's a couple other islands in the main game that you can explore. And that's actually not something we've seen a ton of in terms of like how much are they adding out in the water. So I'm wondering if they're going to do that, because obviously a big highlight in this game is like building your vehicles, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And building boats specifically is a thing. So I wonder if we've really only seen that to my eye, like in lakes and stuff like that, like actually in the mainland, using a boat to get across this amount of water. But yeah, I'm curious also how much they're going to stretch it out into the ocean surrounding. So that's another thing to keep our eye out on. But yeah, so a big part of that direct, Kirklin, was them introducing and showing off there's two abilities. There's a fuse and then what they call Ultra Hand. So Ultra Hand is the one where you can like build vehicles by putting parts together in kind of like a Lego sort of way. And then fuse is essentially the way they showed it off is like, okay, you'll pick up this random ingredient in the world. Let's say it's like the eye of like a bat or something like that. And you can fuse that with, let's say, your bow and arrow. And then your arrow has like, specifically this eyeball gives you like a homing effect. So you can fuse that weapon with this ingredient, and now you get this homing effect. And so that's cool, because that ingredient also still you can be used for cooking and whatnot. So it's just cool. Now every ingredient in the game has some weird way it can combine with your weapons. So those are kind of the two like big mechanics they showed off in that direct. But even just the funny little thing here of like, I guess I didn't think about the fact that you could just fuse your sword and your shield, and that can be a new weapon for you. I thought like, okay, you're fusing ingredients with your weapons to do things and get special effects like ice effects and fire. But I love that in this trailer, you just put your shield on your sword, and now it makes me think like, man, can I just like fire my master sword out of my bow? Like I can't wait to do weird shit like that too. So what do you think now, because you didn't see that direct previously, what do you think about that? Kind of those 2-in-1 mechanics, the fuse and the building, just your overall impressions on how that's going to go.
Well, the fuse makes a lot more sense now after watching the trailer and just thinking like, man, he's got a crazy weapon now. It was like it was like that large. I don't even remember what it was, but it had the shield on there. But I think that's fantastic. It's something very, very unique that's never been in a Zelda game before, and just the possibilities that you can kind of just get creative with on like what you want to combine. I think that's going to be very fun, just comparing it with like friends of like, oh yeah, like what fuses have you used on your playthrough? I'm sure there's going to be a lot that other people have not. So I think just even, I don't know if I was going to say replayability wise, but the game is so long, you'll probably have a good opportunity to kind of dabble in as much as you really want to. But I think it's really fun. It doesn't change like the game too much. It's not like it's not Legend of Zelda anymore. Like it is building upon the base mechanics. And yeah, I just can't wait to see like some of those interactions. It's going to be pretty wild. Yeah. And then for the kind of like the Lego building portion, because I think it was a different trailer. Like they did show off the vehicles, so I did see that. But in the direct, they were just mostly showcasing.
Well,
sorry, what was it?
They had shown it in a trailer, like Link on a weird looking car, and people were like, that thing looks too weird for them to have like designed that and that be a vehicle. So people were like, maybe there's a building mechanic. And then in the direct, they showed off that there's like, you can essentially glue things together. So you can glue like, what they showed is like a boat. So you can glue 3 logs together, put a fan on it, and that makes a little boat for you. You can throw that in the water and you can like cruise along. And then you can use like wheels to a piece of metal and then use another fan to like push that, and that will, power this vehicle. So essentially they showed that in this trailer. They showed in those quick highlights, like they showed a couple new ways you can get creative to make boat. You can make boats, cars, and planes. You can fly too with
That's
these
crazy.
things. So
I feel like the biggest takeaway from me on hearing that is like I can't wait to hear see other people's just very creative creations, because I feel like
that was my takeaway in the direct too. I'm like, I cannot wait to see Reddit after this game comes out.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like
multiplayer feature where people like make little blueprints or something.
Yeah,
that would be kind of cool.
That would be really cool. Yeah, import it in there, because I feel like I'm not creative enough to have something crazy. I'd probably make something functional.
Mine would look
like
awful,
okay, yeah, I'm going with this. This is going to be the one I use for the whole time. But again, like it's not like I can say anything negative about it. Like it's just a cool addition that people can. It's kind of like in maybe a little bit better, but I was gonna compare it to like Fallout, how they had like you can create like your whole fort, but it's like how many
Yeah.
people really dabbled in that? Like in this, you're actually using it to get around in
Mm-hmm.
the world. But for the Fallout thing, like I love seeing people's creations. That was really cool,
Yeah.
but I just didn't have the time to collect all those
It
nuts
seems
and
like
bolts that you need to
the
do it.
planes will be kind of mandatory to some extent, just to get. I'm sure some sky islands will be maybe impossible to get to other than that. But then
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, it does seems to like, yeah, you could just use your horse. Like you don't need to make a car if you don't want to. And the boats, like I don't understand. Like I feel like you could swim pretty well in that original game. That I don't know how mandatory they will be, but I'm sure they'll probably double down on maybe making a bunch of enemies in the water, so you're incentivized to use your boat just so you're safer and stuff like that. Or
Right.
maybe there's more electricity or something, so you'll get shocked if you're in the water. So I think they'll probably do things like that to incentivize you to use it more. But yeah, I still have so many questions on how that will work in terms of in the direct he walks up to an area and there's like all the scrap on the ground that he uses to make the boat. And it's like, okay, well, are you kind of in this one area you can like build a boat here and then you go do something else with it, or is it pretty free flowing in the way you can do it? So I do still have some questions on it, but I think for me one of the big selling points in this trailer was seeing that you can make just like a chariot and then attach that to your horse.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
cool.
was so cool because once again, back to that direct, everything was powered by like these fans and it would like blow behind you and that would push you forward. And then on a car you'd have a wheel, but it would still be like a fan that's pushing the car that's making those wheels go and all that. So the fact that you can just also have like horse-powered vehicles is really cool too. Like, that's such a fun idea, and to once again just combine that with you already have the horse mechanics in the game. You have these fuse mechanics. Why not combine them? And now you can make these hybrid things. Like I want to know, can you get like multiple horses? Can you make like a dog sled equivalent thing, and just get like all these horses
Ooh.
and make your car just zip around the world? So many questions like that. And then another quick shot too was there's like this rock creature. I forget what they're called in the game. And it has like all these bokoblins on top of it, kind of like an Oliphant kind of thing. It's like a little base on top of this rock monster. And then Link's cruising on his like weird vehicle, like going up to like joust with it almost, which looks fun. But I swear on that vehicle, there was like a thing that looked like a bit of a cannon or something. So I'm wondering too now if there's ways you can like set up weapons, defenses, things like that on these vehicles, or if it's just you firing arrows and jumping off of it. Once again, it seems like everything that they are putting into us is like, how can this be just more playful? And that's a great way to do it. Like, why not make these like little mobile killing machines? Like that'll be cool too.
I would be surprised if they don't have that where you can add that, because like again, tying back to Wind Waker, like on the Red Dragon's boat, like you could have like a cannon on, like you would just have your like your bombs, like when you're on the ship, it would just be a cannon that you could use,
cool.
or something like that, like your your grappling hook, like you could still use that on the ship to like find treasure. So that's something that's not really new to the series. So I would be very surprised if you couldn't customize it in that sense of maybe, I don't know, maybe you do actually find like an attachment or something, or you buy something to put onto your vehicle. But I could also just see it like with the items that you have, like maybe you can use them in the vehicle sense, and it just, I don't know how it would transform that way. But if you can already build a boat or something, or a plane, like why can't you just add on a weapon or whatnot? And I think that would be lots of fun. I love the chariot though. Good shout out.
Oh, it looks so cool. Like the design on that was perfect. In the Direct 2, they kind of hinted at the ability maybe you can build a house or real houses or build structures of some sort too. They didn't really, once again, to my eye, show anything in this trailer to hint towards that. But I think that's cool to leave the mystery about that for the actual full game, and I'm sure that'll be tied to some quest line and stuff like that. So I think that's a good detail to hold back on, but still just kind of hint at slightly. Some other things too. They showed at one point like Link just like uses this kind of rocket glove sort of thing, and he just like jets like 50 feet into the sky or something like that. I'm curious what that was exactly, and if that's like, can you put that rocket on your car and then use it like is that another way you could use your vehicle and stuff like that? But I think once again they know that so much people in Breath of the Wild, a lot of that game is like climbing stuff and climbing mountains and whatnot, and that's really fun, and it was really fun. But if you're going back to the same open world and you're climbing the same mountains, that's not going to be as fun the second time around. So I think that seems like another good way that there's multiple ways. One, it's like the planes. That's one way. The other way is this other new ability where you can like just go upwards into the roof, and then you like pop out on the top of mountains and caves. It's hard to describe in a sentence, but there's something like that. But this is cool too. That okay, here's a different way that you can use to quickly gain a lot of altitude rather than having to trek up these mountains slowly. And then once again, because of that fusibility, I'm sure that thing also does allow you to make powered vehicles and stuff like that too. So that was a cool little thing that I noticed. Another thing, like in terms of them changing the environment, the desert looked a lot more terrifying than I remember it to be in Breath of the Wild in terms of like all these sinkholes and stuff like that. So that seems like that area of the map has changed. I don't think we've seen a ton of that. The desert area, which is a pretty big part of the map in the marketing so far. So cool that there's some changes going on there. We talked about the kind of massive underground area. At one point, Link is fighting like on a minecart. He's like on a minecart adjacent to another enemy. That looked fun, but I also just feel like, man, with how physics-based this game is, to have kind of a minecart functionality to this going on, I'm curious to see what that is, whether you're like building tracks to some capacity, if you can add things onto a minecart, or if it's more just a goofy thing and it's just a fun physics object to mess around with. Even that is like good enough, but that seemed pretty cool. That stood out to me. What else? I mean, I think we talked about Ganon, but his look too, like they just really amazing. I think with the art style there, really great choice.
He looks better than ever. he's so hot right now. Yeah, I feel like Ganon has been a villain that I've really grown to appreciate later in life. I don't know. He was like the big bad, and like obviously back in the day, like he was pretty limited on his design. But just with the more recent games too, they do such a good job at just keeping the look, like the base look for Ganon. Like he doesn't look like a completely different individual, but just more modern and detailed and just ever so terrifying. I had to look it up too. The line that he drops in the trailer was, "Do not look away. You witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world." It's like, oh my god. Like I would be terrified if that villain appeared. And he definitely isn't terrifying.
There was some trippiness going on with obviously the music was great, but there was also points when there was maybe certain sound cues. I don't know if it was music or just sound effects that were like, it really sounded like they're being played in reversed. Like they kind of had that feeling to them, right? Where they're a bit janky.
Totally. Yeah.
And so obviously rewinding is like one of the mechanics. They show it in this trailer too, where there's like a enemy shot a rock at you and you can reverse that time on that thing and it shoots the rock back at him essentially. And they showed that too in the direct, where there's like at one point to get to one of the sky islands, there's like a meteor essentially falls down from it. And then you can hop on that meteor and then rewind time on it so you can go back up to that island. So obviously that's a part of it, but I felt like them doing that with the audio here signaled to me that that's going to be an element of the story. There's obviously been a ton of time travel in Legend of Zelda. That's a big thing that they keep going back to dig into that one again. So obviously that's already a mechanic in this game. So I don't think me and you are the best people to break down what the story elements of this game are going to be based on this, because I don't consider myself like a Zelda super fan, so it's hard for me to like look at the details of like the things Zelda's saying and the imagery and the symbols and whatnot and be able to dig into like what it all means. There's other YouTube and podcasts that are better for that perspective of it. I'm more of the mechanics guy when it comes to this game. So, but that still was intriguing to me, and it threw some questions in the back of my head. That's once again what trailers should be doing. It should make you curious for what the final product is going to be. So it definitely succeeded in that way.
The audio very much stood out to me as well. That was something where, like in my mind, like when it was first going off, I'm like, are they just saying like RPG? Because that's what it sounded like. It was like RPG, RPG. I'm like, I get it. This is a role playing. But then it just sounded like how audio is played in reverse, and it just kind of sounds trippy. And then I'm like, oh, like I can't wait to, as you just mentioned, someone to break this down and play that audio in reverse. I'm curious if it actually is something like story
there's no way that we are the only two that noticed that. And then, the last kind of shout out I had was that it seems like there maybe is a bit of a highlight in terms of having allies or friends that you're teaming up with in certain battles. And it's hard because we just kind of saw a quick shot where there's like a fish dude, and I'm sure he has a name that I just can't remember, who's kind of fighting with you in it seems like almost like a more boss fight situation. But then there's a quick shot of Link, and there's a bunch of people with him, like 5 or 6 or 7, 8 people with him that are all standing behind him, and it looks like they're about to go to war. And one of them is a guy with a bucket helmet, and I was like, oh, I love that guy. That's great energy right there. But it makes me curious, like where that is going to be in the game, whether that's just like oh, for the big set piece moments for this big battle, you go on all these quests to gather all these people to build up your little army, your tiny little army, and you're gonna go fight Ganon? Or is it going to be something where you can like have people tag along with you in the way many open world games do, whether it's companions and stuff like that? So I don't know what's going on there, but that was another thing that stood out to me, where they showed a few shots of that, and I felt like that was kind of intentional, of hinting at how you're going to interact with other characters in the world, and hopefully a bit more of a meaningful way than was in Breath of the Wild, which was a pretty solemn experience, which I think works for what that game is. The way the music is it's a quiet, a lonely game in a very intentional and successful way, but it seems like this game's trying not to be that again. And once again, I think that some of these building mechanics actually work well along with that. Build a car, bring your homies with you, cruise around Hyrule, all that stuff. So excited to see what's going on there. If there's more to that, or if it's just like, oh yeah, it was a cool shot, so we put it in the trailer, and it's actually just like a cutscene. But we'll see.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I feel like subconsciously I've always thought that it is weird that there is a lot of people in the Legend of Zelda games that you interact with, but like never in really combat sequences. Like maybe on a certain game you have Zelda with you, like shooting an arrow to take down Ganon, like at the very end. But really, for the most part, like it is just you and no one else really around. But like there was multiple shots other than just like the big squat up scene, like when Link is on his horse, he's like spinning a spear or something overhead, and there's just like a full on battle going on, and that like instantly just like surprised me, because like I've never seen that in a Zelda game before, like actually Link being part of like a greater battle. I very curious as to how that plays out, and just gameplay wise as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because since Breath of the Wild came out, they did Hyrule Warriors 2, or I don't think it actually had a 2 in the sequel, but it's Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, right? Which was like the Warriors, Dynasty Warrior style game, specifically in the Breath of the Wild Zelda world, where it's like all about big battles and stuff like that. And that game looks pretty much the same as Breath of the Wild, and it's obviously more limited in the movement and physics, objects and mechanics and stuff like that. But I wonder if there's like some way that those games were built in the same engine, and somehow they can like borrow some of the code or elements from that game with bigger battles and stuff like that. I'd be curious if there's any sort of way that interacts, in terms of like maybe that's just a thing where Link gets a few homies on his side, and you can choose where to dispatch them on the map to go fight off like Ganon's impending rising army that he's talking about in that line of dialogue that you mentioned. So I doubt there'd be anything super close 1-to-1 in terms of because Age of Calamity was made by a different studio than Breath of the Wild studio, but it still kind of stuck out to me once again. So once again, a lot of little threads in here that you could pull on them, but ultimately this game's coming out so soon that I just can't wait to get some of those details and whatnot. So yeah, we're right around the corner on that one, May 12th.
That's crazy. Yeah.
With that, let's take our next break, and we will be right back. And Kirklin, I need to take like 2 minutes here just to. I'll be right back real quick. Okay.
Hello.
And we are back. Let's talk next about Final Fantasy XVI. This is coming out in the summer, June 22nd. There was a trailer which was kind of tucked inside of a state of play that was about 25 minutes long, which really detailed a ton about this game. And yeah, I've been very... I don't know if on the fence is the right word, but I've been very curious about this game. I'm very much not a Final Fantasy guy, but it's such an important part of the gaming world that I've always wanted to jump in. And the last few entries haven't really done it for me just visually and stuff like that. Like I don't think it's 15 or 14, whatever like the most recent like mainline
15
game was.
would have been like the most comparable to this one as well.
Yeah.
I would say.
And like I don't know, just some of the style in that game in terms of the character designs and like the tech and stuff like that wasn't really doing it for me, but like the more high fantasy that they're going back into with this one has grabbed me from those initial trailers. And so it's been pretty high on my radar for that way. But then recently they were showing more and more about it and seeing more about the combat and it being kind of like, I guess, Devil May Cry, kind of Bayonetta style combat. Then I see that, I'm like, I don't really like that type of gameplay too much. So then my interest kind of wanes a bit. But then there's other parts that they're showing in terms of like the world and exploration in this game and just some of the freedom that they're trying to establish with it. And I'm like, oh man, it does look really cool. So, and then ultimately, all of that doesn't even matter because I don't have a PS5 yet. So it's like, okay, is this the time where like I get a PS5 so that I can jump into this game when it comes out? I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at here is I'm very divided and I don't know how to feel about this. But I still also do want to get into Final Fantasy, and this seems like a good time. And they even say that at the start of the state of play, you do not need to have played any Final Fantasy before to enjoy this game. They're trying to hit that nail pretty hard. So that's how I'm feeling. We'll get into the specifics, but yeah, what did you think about this? Because I don't associate you with big as a Final Fantasy guy either. So what's going on with you?
Definitely not. And Final Fantasy, like the series, is something that I feel like I really should have been like just a part of, like from a long time ago, like from the PS1 days. I remember playing a Final Fantasy, can't remember, probably like 7 or something on PS1. That was back when it was just like turn-based, and I think I was just a young gamer, so I was like, turn-based, what is this? This is boring, I don't like this. But just what the world is with the characters, the story, it's something that I think if I actually gave it the chance, it would have just taken over. So maybe it is for the better that I didn't, because I would have been obsessed, probably playing all the titles. Final Fantasy 15, I played quite a bit, and by quite a bit, I mean I probably got like a quarter through the game. Really, really enjoyed it though. But something, I don't know, just pulled me out of it, which happens way too much for video games these days. But watching this trailer absolutely just blew my mind. I was so impressed by this. I feel like I really haven't looked too much into Final Fantasy 16 at all, but like the characters, the gameplay, the visuals, I actually really enjoy that type of combat. Like I haven't played many DMC games, but the one I did play, I'm pretty sure I beat it in like maybe 2 days. Like it was like I just got so obsessed with it and really enjoyed that combat. Just a lot of bright things on the screen, and it's just satisfying taking on like a giant demon monster or something like that. And yeah, I really, really liked it. It kind of reminded me of like a Nier Automata combat as well.
Okay.
But just I think the high fantasy element of it really surprised me, because Final Fantasy 15 has a very different aesthetic of this. It's I don't even know how to describe it. Like there's cars and stuff in it, so it kind of seems modern day, but there's also like the High Royals, which is kind of like a medieval castle type thing, but it's like
whatever it
just
was, it
very
wasn't working
different
for me. I remember like Cyrus, playing that game when I lived with him, and always just watching it and being like, I don't like what I'm looking at.
They have like emo clothes on too. Like it's all like dark and like chains and stuff like that.
There's
So
like an edginess to it.
Yeah,
that sticks out
for sure. But this one, like it very much is just that medieval time, but just with like the Final Fantasy twist on it, I guess. And I was very, very, very blown away by this trailer. Like I could not believe how good this looked. This was something where it's like, okay, I'm gonna just say this, where I'm not gonna get this game until I get through the 15. I know that they made the statement you don't need to, but I've already brought him up today, but my buddy Tyler, Final Fantasy 15 was one of his favorite games. Like he has hundreds of hours into it. He says, man, like you gotta get in there and play through. Like it is fantastic. And like in this state of play, without jumping ahead too much, but like they even mentioned that like you play through like the 3 stages of this one character's life, and I'm pretty sure 15 had that similar element where you actually play as this character like later on, which is, I don't know, something I'm not too used to in video games. It's usually like you have like sometimes they do time skips or whatnot, but just to have like 3 set times, just eras, I guess, in this individual's life. I almost feel like most
games don't care enough about the story to do something like that. They're like, oh well, it's easier, it's good enough. Like who knows? The story takes place over months, weeks, days. No one really knows. But I guess you quickly to talk about that, like it seems like you start and at least play like maybe the first half, like a lot of the game in that kind of middle time period, like in your 20s or something like that. And then you'll dip back in like a flashback sort of way. Playable flashbacks is what they called them, where you're like a teenager, kid, whatever it is, and figure more about that.
Right.
And then there's like in his 30s, you're visiting the character again. So I imagine at some point there is just like this hard time jump where you go like those 10 years in the future or something. Or maybe it's more gradual where it's like, this event happens and like 2 years have passed in game and you keep going through. I don't know, but that is very compelling because once again, as you mentioned, not a lot of games do something like that.
Yeah. I was just jiving with so many things that they're showing off here, but I think the biggest thing was the world building aspect of just how like the different factions, I guess, the world that they're in, the different creatures are there, like the giant demon type monster things, like all of that was just so interesting to me. And I actually was very much thinking of like Fire Emblem during this trailer. I feel like this is like a Fire Emblem type thing without tactics in it. Like it's as if you're playing just like that DMC Bayonetta style of like action, but in like a Fire Emblem type setting where you have like the anime type characters, but also just when they brought up like the world map, it very much reminded me of like the Kingdom of Fargus or like, you know, like from Three Kingdoms. Like it reminded me of that map so much. So I was seeing a lot of similarities there, and I love all of that. What was shown, the icon system was, I feel like that's something that people will kind of be 50-50 on. Some people will absolutely love it. Some people will probably be annoyed with those sequences. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I just feel like sometimes when a game has like a boss battle where you're not as like your normal combat style, like you're this giant dragon thing that's just shooting fireballs, like some people could probably just be annoyed with those sequences. I could definitely see myself being in that category, but they were just so damn cinematic, and the music that was hitting was just oh my god, this is eye candy, and I am very much vibing with this, which is wild because I obviously saw Final Fantasy on the show notes, you know, the state of play. It's like, okay, I will be talking about this, something that I'm not going to jump on at all, but I was so blown away by this, and this is another thing where I'm like, man, Final Fantasy, like if I think this could have been like my series if I got into it very early on, but very, very impressed by this.
I know. Eventually, we just got to jump in, which you did with 15. To be fair,
yeah.
So you have been dipping your toes.
Got to jump back in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to what you're talking about, like just once again, just like Breath of the Wild, like the music, fucking unreal. Which Final Fantasy always had some of the most iconic video game music in general. Visually, this game is beautiful. I love the look of it. And yeah, I think if I can get over the combat, if I'm into the combat, then this seems like it would be a total win in terms of just the formula for me. And to speak to some things with it, like it seems very fast paced and very fluid in terms of the movement, like very acrobatic kind of combat, which I'm into that sort of thing. And then I got to say, like this trailer, state of play and all that, like this game seems like it has all sorts of enemy variety. Like I don't think that'll be a complaint you'll see from people and reviews and stuff like that. It seems like there is so much going on in terms of just like the variety of like whether it's just like a sword to sword battle or up to those icons and then like everything in between. So much creative designs. There was one that was like almost like a big bearded dragon, and I was just like the detail on its scales and stuff. I was like, damn, only a PS5 can do that kind of thing. It was pretty powerful. Yeah, I think for the icon battles, which I guess for anyone who didn't watch is essentially like think of it like a big mech suit almost that you're going into. It's more of a transformation than like an actual suit. But essentially, you can go to like this almost kaiju sort of mode, and you'll have these fights, and they seem like they aren't just. It's not like you go into that, and then that's like one type of gameplay. Like you'll have almost like a shooter version of that, or like one where it's like an on rail shooter, or like third person shooter, or just once again like hand sort of combat with these icons. So that seems like a pretty varied system as well. And then, yeah, I guess narrowing it down, talking more about the exploration element of it. I'm curious if you got a vibe for this. I could not tell from this if it is an open world game or if it's, we'll say like an open hub sort of game where there's all these different. They made a big point of like on this world map there are all these different fast travel points. You can go to these, and that's like this zone. But I couldn't get a vibe if it's like actually one interconnected world that you can then teleport to get to different districts, or if it is like here's these kind of somewhat larger open areas that are not really stitched together in a logical way, and you're just teleporting across these vast areas of land. So you can get like, here's a highlight of each of the kingdoms, I guess, but you're not necessarily connecting all of it.
Right. I kind of feel it'll be like what you just laid out there, where maybe there is more open areas that you can explore, but to get to like the next kingdom, you'll either have to take that like loading screen type area or like a fast travel portal or something to get there. But like there was some sequences where he was Clive, the main character, was like riding on one of those like chicken things,
Yes,
and he's just like ripping through a field. And like Final Fantasy 15 definitely had big open areas to explore, but like it still was kind of a zone. Like you would have to go through something to get into the next zone, if I remember that correctly.
So we can probably expect that for this, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
Which, nothing wrong with that. I think that's totally cool. I really liked they showed like from humble towns to like these vibrant desert areas, these like desolate kind of stone cities where it seemed like all the color was sucked out in a really cool way that like it felt kind of creepy and all that. So I really like the variety in those locations. And once again, if it is like, here's 3 or 4, here's a sampler platter of each of these different countries and what they look like, some of the highlight areas, and like a couple towns and like open areas and whatnot. I think that's really cool, and you'll get a lot of good variety there. And then they really highlighted like one of the main home bases that I didn't write the name down for it, but it seems like there's a lot you can do here. The classic stuff, like
I think it was Sid is what it was called, like
yeah,
CID.
Sid's Hideaway, right?
Yeah,
that's
there
the
you
one.
got it.
And in the Hideaway, you can do the classic stuff like upgrading your gear and getting side quests and all that stuff. But one of the things that I thought was pretty cool is it seems like they're taking a page out of the Monster Hunter book, and there's like a hunter board essentially where you can go to and see like bounties for nearby beasts and stuff like that, and then that would essentially just turn into a side quest where you can go for bonus XP, or maybe it'll entwine into actual quest lines and stuff like that too, or you got to go hunt down this monster to get certain rewards. And that seemed pretty cool too, like because I feel like this seems like the kind of game where you could just I almost feel like they're really highlighting that in this. Is like there is a main story, there is a certain thing going on, but like just exist in the world and go around and make the world a better place by taking out these monsters and helping these people out. And it does seem like one of those games where I'd want to do that rather than just rushing down the main story. And I'm glad that they highlighted like what can be fun about that sort of play style. Because sometimes I feel like we don't always get that, but it seems like there is a good mix of like types of side quests and side content you can be doing. And they said too, like there's a focus on endgame content, so like whenever that is said, I actually do take note because I feel like most developers aren't really talking about that.
Yeah.
But like Diablo, they've made a big point about that. Like they have to for a game like that. But I was kind of surprised to see that for FF16, that like the end game content we have a big highlight on that. All this stuff that they're talking about.
Especially for like a single player focused game,
Exactly,
I feel like it's a little bit abnormal, but I don't know. So I'm pretty sure, and again, I never got there, but I'm pretty sure Final Fantasy 15 had something similar where there's just, I don't know if they're called like, they definitely weren't called this, but it was something like just super demons or something like that. Like you could like go and take those bounties to just keep you playing and give you a harder challenge.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe one of the weaker things for me was some of the characters they showed off here. You mentioned Clive, who's the player character. I guess I was hoping too, like one thing I love about Final Fantasy is just that classic like 4-player party element. And I feel like in recent titles, you have your party and you can switch between them. But it seems like in this game, like, no, you are playing as Clive. That's your one character, and you can level them up. You get the icon, and there's different icons and things like that. But you're set as this one character, and it seems like there is still companions. They showed them fighting alongside you, and you could probably control them to some extent, set their like behaviors and stuff like that. So I don't know if this is necessarily a disappointment for me, but I guess the other part with it is that they were kind of introducing a bunch of characters. Like, here's this character's name. Here's what their role is in the story. And like none of them did anything for me. None of them moved the needle. I'm like, I don't really care about any of them. When you think I'd want to, and even Clive, like I don't know, he seems like a pretty generic like JRPG nameless, player character avatar. So I hope that's something that is a bit better. And I don't know if a trailer would really sell me on that. Maybe it's just I got to be in the world for a few hours, talk to these characters, hear the performances and stuff. But I don't know. Did that stand out to you, or were you more okay with it?
No, I completely agree with you. In hindsight,
except for Torgal,
at least,
of course, the dog. Torgal, he seems great.
Oh man, that was Twilight Princess vibes all over. It seemed like he even had like a bandage like on his arm too, which is like the chain that like the Wolf Link always has. So I'm like, oh my god, like he looks exactly like that. So I was vibing with the what was his name? Sorry, Torgal.
Torgal, yeah.
Yeah, so I love that character. I can't wait to see him. But For everything else, I mentioned in hindsight, I agree with you because it's something that I just didn't really notice like on the first viewing because I was just like, oh my god, the music, oh my god, the combat, the world, oh my god, this is amazing. But yeah, like the characters really were nothing too special. However, I'll maybe hold off some criticisms there because I do know that Final Fantasy does a fantastic job of just getting you attached to characters. So I feel like through the story, you'll really probably feel for some of these characters. Like even in the trailer, there's a moment where Clive is like he's like sliding down this hill like on something, and then like a giant boulder comes down and just like marks a character, and he's like, oh no, and I'm like, oh okay, that did nothing to me here, but like maybe
That
that's
stood out to me too.
maybe that'll be a more emotional death than this comedic one in my eyes.
He
'cause I
must
was
be a
just like,
nobody
wow.
if they're gonna spoil his death in the trailer. Yeah.
For sure, yeah, for sure. But I don't know. Like even there was like that little boy that was shown in like the flashback sequence. I think that like was kind of turning into that icon Phoenix thing. And I just remember he was like calling out to Clive. So it was like, okay, this is probably gonna be an emotional part of the story. And I can definitely see me getting attached to the characters just from my experience of going through like Final Fantasy 15 because they do a great job at just having you what's the best word, like bond with the characters in the group, and that's such a big portion of Final Fantasy 15 because you do have like those 4 characters that like you're going with the whole journey with them, so they're talking all the time. They even made a point of emphasis that you'll be fighting with them, but they'll also be dropping lines here and there. I sure would hope so, otherwise that would just be really boring to have a silent character with you. So that's something where it's like, yeah, definitely agree, like the initial showing of Clive and like the supporting cast, they did nothing for me design wise, but I don't know, I think they'll win me over.
Yeah, you're open to it. One thing I did really like too was they showed when you're in the hideaway, one of the things you can do is like go and view like these character charts, which essentially tells you like how each character is related to each other, whether that's like, oh, this is just the father of this character, or I'm sure like certain story beats, or like in the kingdoms and stuff like this. And it looked like a very complex web of connections, really did, and something like that was like, man, that would be really helpful. And just in terms of like, if you just got busy, didn't play the game for a couple months, you come back and you're like, oh god, I don't remember what's going on here. I'm sure that is very helpful. But also for me, like I just find like for stories like this, it's really hard for me to get engaged with it. Like, not, excuse the pun, but like Fire Emblem is a big example where I often skip the story beats and like certain dialogue sequences because it's just like generic country against other country, and I don't care, and I start to lose focus and stuff like that. But I feel like something like that with this character chart will be a good way to reinforce it and get you involved and really make sure you know everything that's going on and whatnot. So I thought that was a good detail as well.
Yeah, I agree. I like the layout too of just actually having like lines like connecting people and just the relation to it, because you mentioned the Fire Emblem one. I'm one that like I will sit down and read through every single like chapter of like connecting it. I don't know, I like to get as immersed as possible. I remember like the beginning of Witcher 3 had something similar where you just talk to like a guy and he just fills you in on like what's been happening in the world, which is perfect because Witcher 3 was the first one I jumped into, so you kind of explain the events, like this is why we're here and these people are, like they're the ruling body. Like I do like when games do that because it's not a main storyline to have that conversation or read these things. Like it's all supplement material to just boost the immersion. And okay, why is this character shitty to this person? And then you can like obviously if you go through that screen, it's like, oh okay, they had this falling out or whatnot. So I really like when they add that in as an optional thing, because there is going to be plenty of people that'll probably play through this entire game and not even know like some characters are related to who or whatnot, which is perfectly fine. And I feel like they've really been marketing this as a more approachable game, obviously with the line at the beginning, you don't need to play any other title, but even just like the like explaining like the rings to kind of make the combat easier. I thought that was a really cool way to kind of tackle that aspect, as opposed to just toning down the difficulty. Like I can just tank a lot of hits. It's like, no, you are equipping this augment so you have more time to like react with your dodge or something. I thought that was really cool and something that I don't see too much in video games, maybe not at all.
Yeah, that is a similar sort of thing in Nier Automata as well. You mentioned that connection earlier, where like some of the upgrades, like the chips you're putting on your character, felt kind of similar to what you're getting here. Where for sure. It feels distinctly different than like a classic skill tree and the way those sorts of stats usually go in games like this. So I agree. That was a cool system. I love that all of them were just called like timely this, timely that.
Yeah.
It was just like some goofy thing that felt like some weird translation thing that they're like, yeah, we'll just go with this. Every single thing is called the timely bracelet or the whatever it is. So that was goofy.
Sounds nicer than like the noob ring. Or
Yeah,
something,
exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So I guess, for this game, I'm not sure if I'm picking it up yet. Kirklin, you're probably not picking it up.
Not right away. Not right
yeah.
away. Maybe in the future.
I'm pretty sure though Dante will, so maybe I'll try and get him
Nice.
on Sidequest when this game comes out to talk about it, if nothing at all. And then also I think like this week or in the next couple weeks is when the Final Fantasy like pixel remasters are coming to a bunch of different platforms, and those are like just like some good updated versions of those original like Final Fantasy 1 through 6 sort of thing. With it seems like some good new like just quality of life features in there and some updated visuals and stuff like that. So I'm thinking about picking up some of those because I think you can either get it like as a collection or piecemeal by like individual ones. And so I was thinking about picking up some of those and just dipping my toes back into some Final Fantasy stuff. So maybe I'll talk about those on the podcast at some point.
Nice.
At the very least. With that, let's go right into our last topic of the day, which is for our favorite Arcane Studios and Redfall. So, if I could only ever talk positively about Arcane, how much I love them and how cool they are and how awesome their games are, that would be great. But I don't want to just seem like we're biased over here either. And when shitty news comes out about Arcane, it's good for us to cover that as well. So, I'm going to paint it with that as a little bit of backstory there. But essentially, in the last few days, they announced that Redfall at launch on consoles is going to be locked to 30 frames per second. For Xbox Series X, it'll be up to 4K, which is the maximum. And then on Series S, it'll be, I think it's 1440 or is 1080. 1440, I think, is the maximum that console can do. So I think it like visually those things are maxed out, but then the frame rate is going to be locked to 30. And they said that later on they're going to patch in 60 frames per second update. And so I'm going to combine that with another piece of news that happened a few weeks ago, which was that they said that Redfall is an always online game. It is required that you have an internet connection to play this game, even if you are playing in a single player capacity, not any sort of co-op features, just playing on your own. You still need that always online feature or that element to it. And that got a lot of backlash because people hate that. I am one of those people who hates that so much as a big Hitman enjoyer. I hate that element about Hitman. And then they announced very shortly after that we are going to look into it. We are going to try and fix it. And we are going to later on, we won't be able to do it for launch, but we are going to try and patch out the always online element to Redfall at a later date. So with those two elements of the game, here are two things that to some people aren't going to be a big deal. To other people, they're going to be a huge deal. Two features of the game. I would argue the 60 frames per second, that should be like, that's like almost inexcusable as far as I'm concerned. It's a fucking Xbox Series X. This is not on the Xbox One. This is not on any other consoles. This is the only console it's on. Why can you, like, it should be, sorry guys, we can only do 60 frames at launch. 120 frames we're patching in later. Like Doom Eternal, for example, is a game that has 120 frames on Xbox Series X, as a bunch of other ones do. And this is a first-party Xbox game at this point. So with those two pieces of news, the always online, the 30 frames, there's been some discussion of like, should they delay the game until those things are part of the game and they can launch it with the best foot forward? Just talking strictly about that. What do you think, Kirklin? Is this something that, are these big enough deals that they should delay the game until those are things that are in the game? Or is it okay to patch in 60 frames at a later date? Which, to be clear, they did not say when. They did not say 2 weeks after launch. They didn't say a month. They didn't say 6 months. They didn't say 2 years. We have no idea how long it's. If it's 2 years, that'd be fucking wild. But we just don't know. Right? They didn't have any information. The always online thing as well is a nebulous. Who knows when that's actually going to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone that I feel like frame rate doesn't bother me too much unless it's like inconsistent. Like if I'm at a steady and then it goes to a sequence where it's combat and it's really choppy and noticeable, that's when it's like, okay, this is kind of annoying. But if it is just a steady 30 frames, I feel like that's manageable for myself. Mm-hmm. However, for like a brand new game that's coming out like this, and as you mentioned, like it's an Xbox studio, it's coming out on the Xbox at 30 frames. I don't think your statement is too harsh at all. I think that is pretty inexcusable, and in my eyes, I think it should be delayed. I think the game game is incomplete in that stage, especially if the PC version has the 60 frames already. You know, that one is still the online locked. But still, I feel like that's something that if they said, okay, we're gonna try our best to patch this out, I can take that a pill a lot easier than the 30 frames one and not have an actual date. I think they're fine to release it if it's like, okay, our first patch for the game is going to be fixing this like pronto, then okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I can, even if I don't have Games Pass, like I could justify paying full price for that, just knowing that like maybe in a week or two this'll not be an issue. Because yeah, the online one, fortunately, like I'm always connected to the internet, but still, I would always prefer if a game had the option for the online or offline. That one I can kind of give the hand wave. I feel like I'm also just kind of climatized. A lot of games these days kind of have that where you have to be attached to the network to at least have all the functions available. But
I think it's slightly different if you're playing PC games too. I feel like that's slightly different to me than like a console. Switch is obviously a different case because you can actually take that on the go.
Right.
But I don't, even just for myself, I know like sometimes my Xbox will just drop the internet very quickly or something like that. Whereas on like PC, it's like a slightly different case. But
anyway, and if you're playing a game, like, and you're on your console and you just lose your internet, like they would kick you out of the game, even if you're not playing online features. So that is something very strange. But yeah, with the FPS thing, that's weird to me. And it's kind of, hate talking negative about Arcane, but it's very unfortunate this news coming out this close to Redfall release too, right? Like, it's not like this was announced a long time ago and we're going to work on this. Hopefully we have it ready for launch, but if not, we're still going to release it, maybe patch this in, in the near future. But to not have any set dates on all that too, I think that's kind of bad.
Yeah. Well, there's another element to it as well, where about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, they had a event. I don't know where the event was. I don't know if it was at their hometown in Austin, Texas, or if this was somewhere in LA or something like that. But they brought in a bunch of content creators to play the game for a few hours and then, share those impressions online, get some hype going for the game. And, the answer to this is not exactly clear, but it seems like those people were playing the game on PCs, and it seems like they were playing at 60 frames per second. Listened to another podcast in which people on this podcast went to this event, and I trust them, and they're like, yeah, I gotta say, like, I couldn't crack the game open, the code to see, but like that, I'm pretty sure that was 60 frames. So to me, that's pretty disingenuous to have a bunch of content creators come play the game in a way that is not what the release for. Of course, there's going to be little differences of balance and things like that, and bugs and whatnot that you'd hope they'd fix. But to me, that's wholly different than get a bunch of people in playing at 60 frames, and then actually, though, for the console players on Game Pass and stuff like that, now 30 frames is actually what this thing is going to be. That feels like a step too far. And yeah, so that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Just bad energy on that. I don't like that decision at all. It just feels, like they're not putting their best foot forward is the easiest way to put it. And then, two, like, in terms of, like, should they delay it or not, I'm kind of in the camp they should. I don't think this is the end of the world, and I think I've definitely died back on terms of for many years I was like, oh, this game's not 60 frames, like unplayable. Like I was definitely like a pretty hardcore in that camp. I've changed now. I'm like, I'm okay with if it's a stable 30, I can live with it. It's fine. But I do think for a Xbox, for a game that is exclusive to it's not even next gen anymore, the current gen Xbox Series X and S, like that should not be the case for a game like this. It just doesn't work, especially for an online game with interaction and stuff like that. I'm sure that's why it is. I'm sure it's because of the online nature of it makes it so much more complex, and it's harder. It was just harder for them to hit that clean 60 and all that stuff. And so, not to give them excuses, but I'm sure that's why it happened. But I think for those reasons, delay the game until at least the 60 frames. I think the online only thing, you could still release the game fine with that being in there and then patch that out later. I think that's okay, because I also could feel like that is something that could take a lot longer to fix. Hopefully the frames thing is like a few weeks and they got it locked and can fix that. But I think, delay the game so you have the 60 frames at launch, because then you'll just hit people in a better way. You'll come out with your best foot forward. And then also, the release date of this thing is already not very good. It's coming out on a Tuesday, I think. So it's coming out like literally 4 to 5 days after Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor, sorry, and Dead Island 2. So just days after those two games, Dead Island 2, you could argue is like kind of similar in what it's doing too. So it's like maybe even capturing some of that same audience. And then once again, just like a few short days afterwards, Tears of the Kingdom. I'm messing up all my names here with the sequels. Tears of the Kingdom comes out. That's rough. Like that's not a good time for this game already to be coming out when you have Star Wars and Zelda surrounding this thing, sandwiching it. For Arcane, it's a new IP. Arcane already, not the hugest sellers in terms of these games, like more of a niche audience. So I feel like just a delay would also be good in terms of that release date for them. But then I don't know, like maybe from the Xbox perspective, being that publisher now, maybe they're like, this thing has to come out before Starfield, and there's just not much more time if that thing's coming out in September. So maybe there's some pressure there. Yeah. Or maybe they just didn't see that people would be pissed about this. But I feel like, man, you're announcing this after people got to play the game. So close, as you mentioned, to when it's releasing. And also, like, the last few days, they've been doing, like, character highlights for all the characters. Like, here's a video, like, here's their story, here's what their playset looks like. And not to get conspiracy theory again, but, like, they release one of those, and then they, like, drop this news, and they, like, release another video, like, the day after of, like, here's this other character. So I feel like they were trying to bury it to some extent, but, like, no, this got unearthed quickly, and people are talking about it, so... I don't know what else. I don't know what else there is to say on this. I think it just kind of sucks. Does it hurt my excitement? A little tiny bit. I'm still so diehard in the Arcane camp, and obviously we've been doing this retro for months now, playing through all these games. That I'm very very excited for this. It's still the game I'm most excited for. That Starfield are kind of tied for 1 and 2 there. So I'm still very very excited. Still playing at launch. Still, I don't think this will dissuade anyone in our group from checking it out, and look forward to that 60 frames. But it definitely it sucks. It's too bad.
I would have suggested too, like if they just released the PC version and then delayed the console version, if it was on multiple consoles. But the fact that it is just Xbox, it's like, well, I mean, if it's already on Games Pass for like everyone, like there is no reason in delaying just one of the versions if you have PC or the Xbox. So it's. Yeah, it's just unfortunate, I think, just that they made that decision, and just kind of, like you said, like trying to bury it under the rug. I feel like it's already bad news, but when you find out that they like try to kind of, and again, a little bit tinfoily, but if it is actually the case that it appears to be that they did just try and bury it amongst some character highlights, it's a little bit, I don't know, a little sour, at least feeling in my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they announced it before the launch, but I wonder, I am very curious on the timing of it in terms of like, did they want to put this statement out so close to launch that they can kind of be like, oh, there's nothing we can do about it pre-launch, like we're just gonna have to release the game as is? Or are they putting this out now to like see how people feel about it? Like, are they actually considering a delay? If they are going to do that, like they have to do it fucking quick, right? There's not much time. You would think that like, shit, this thing's probably already like shipping to the GameStop and shit. I don't know how that stuff works. Like you would think that part of it is like coming down to the wire. So I don't know. If it does get delayed, I will also just be slightly salty just because of like the Arcane retro timing and all that, and how hard we've been going on those games to try and finish them before the retro. And if it gets delayed, I'll be like, oh damn, like all this, we've already released all these episodes except for one. So I would be slightly salty from that perspective. But I am definitely always in team camp, like delay your game until it's playable. There are certain cases where it's like Suicide Squad, you shouldn't delay to like just release the game at this point. So we didn't need it. I didn't feel like making that a main topic today, talking about that game again and that delay. But this one I think would have been justified for a delay. But once again, how long was it going to be? Is the 60 frames coming in a month? In which case that seems like a totally fine delay to me. But if it's like a year, 6 months, then it's like, okay, I understand why they wouldn't want to kick it back. So hopefully they fix that thing super quickly. Hopefully. And hopefully it's like 60 frames doesn't come at the cost of like 720p or some stupid resolution, because that's how they could only get it to work. So hopefully it's like a good 60 frames and not also, and hopefully it's not just like a 60 frames. It's like, okay, we can say it's 60 frames, but then it like chugs like crazy and it creates all these desyncs and multiplayer and all these other issues. So obviously that's worst case scenario. So let's hope it is not like that, but yeah.
Absolutely.
Kirklin, is there anything else?
I don't think so. We nailed it all.
Covered it, eh?
Yeah.
This is another fun episode of Sidequest. Next week, I think next week's episode might come out on a weird day for a reason I will not say right now. But maybe a day early, maybe a day late. Keep your eyes posted on that. But it'll be a big one. We'll talk about Minecraft Legends, talk a little bit about Advance Wars, maybe some coffee talk, all that stuff. So a lot of new games coming out, and then just all sorts of new stuff coming out over the next few weeks. So it'll be a good time here at on the Geek First Sidequest feed. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Kirklin, for joining me today, and we'll see everyone next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.